Have you ever wondered how the role of grandparents has evolved in today's fast paced world? Or maybe you've been grappling with the pressures of modern parenting ideals and how to balance them with the older traditional approaches. Have you questioned how to manage your child or even your grandchild, their big emotions without labeling them or shutting them down? And how do you find the perfect balance between staying present with your child and maintaining your own sanity when things get tough? I'm Kate Mason, and welcome to Parenting and Personalities. This is the podcast that connects you to the ones you care about the most. Today, I'm really excited to have Kate and Steph back with me as I delve into those thought-provoking questions. We'll explore the challenges and joys of parenting and grandparenting, the importance of communication with grandparents, and how being flexible with your approach can help you adapt to the ever-changing dynamics of family life. So, if you're looking for some fresh perspectives on child rearing, grandparenting, and everything in between, stay with me. Steph Noon is a professional accredited coach and qualified practitioner in the field of positive psychology. She holds a diploma of positive psychology and well-being, and in addition, she's undertaken extensive study in two specialist trauma therapies: internal family systems and compassionate inquiry. In 2017, she co-founded Thriving Leaders, which delivers programs for leaders to empower their performance through enhanced well-being. Steph has a deep passion for assisting individuals and organizations thrive, which compels her to keep excitedly abreast of the latest scientific research in neuroscience and positive psychology. Kate is a mother of 2.5-year-old Cece, founder of Navigate Aged Care, and a passionate advocate for intergenerational living. Kate lives with her toddler, husband, and 91-year-old grandmother. She holds a master's degree in gerontology and spends her days juggling motherhood, a small business, caring for her grandma, and trying to keep all the balls in the air. Welcome, Steph and Kate. It's great to have you both back to talk to me today. And we're going to talk about topics that affect so much of us. It's parenting and also the role of grandparents in today's world. And I want to take a closer look at the current expectations of good parenting, which for Kate must be really stressful, and how the role of grandparents has evolved over time.
Right, big one.
It is. So let's start from hearing from both of you. So what are the parenting ideals that you currently share? And are they more modern? Or are they a blend of old and new? Is there anything old in any of your parenting techniques?
I think most of the parenting content and parenting advice that we kind of follow is possibly more new, but I think it's really balanced in also just trying to simplify it to maybe how parenting was before as well. And
Yeah.
like basic things like spending time outdoors and running around and spending lots of time with family and trying to not overanalyze the things that are going on through a child's development as well. So I think whilst they're kind of based in, really important things like acknowledging the feelings and being present for that. And we chose to not sleep train CC, which went okay for us. So there's some of those kind of newer things that we've done, but I think it's probably grounded in pretty old school values too.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's a great reflection, Steph. Do you
Mm.
agree with that?
I think that's really a really
Yeah.
good reflection. And I'd say that's kind of like the old stuff, that outdoor play and family camping, all that you're talking about. I agree. It was so obvious that I wouldn't have even thought of it because it's so much a part of our family.
That's
But
right.
I
Because we
really
don't think of that as kind of modern and new.
no,
That
no,
you
it's
should
just
be
what we
doing
do.
that stuff. That's right.
But I see that as the really important foundational ingredient to do everything else from. And
Mm.
then the layers into that I've certainly modified and well, it was new to me this time round in terms of grandparenting and learning new stuff is that the giving, allowing the child to be in with their emotions more and being sort of just a guiding post and navigator for them in that. And also that not when at their height of their behavior that feels the most difficult and challenging is actually the time it requires you to be most present and most calm.
Mm.
And I know when I was parenting, that would be a time where you'd go to your room until you're able to
Yep.
behave. And I
That's
now
right.
know how terrible that is because they were already, they weren't being, there's no, I love this. This is probably a key learning for me. There's no such thing as naughty behavior or a naughty child.
Mm,
There is
mm,
just a child that is expressing an overwhelm of something within them that society might want to label as a good child, a bad child, or a naughty child and a good child. It's not. The child isn't naughty. It just has an inability to cope with whatever is going on inside of them. And that really helped me um, to stay really present and not judge. If you look at your child through, oh, look how naughty they're being, it's much harder to stay calm and present um, and connected with them if you're thinking of them as naughty. I just think of that they're just a normal, loving child currently in a really difficult state. And what they need from me is to stay present. Now, that isn't necessarily easy, and I don't get it right every time. I mean, sometimes she's literally slapping my face, she's
mm,
biting, and she
mm.
does express her emotions and her got big feelings, big feelings.
And
So,
big teeth now.
oh yeah, hey. So I'm not saying that I can do it perfectly right all the time. I'm not
Mm,
saying I don't get heightened sometimes. I do. Sometimes she pushes my buttons and I have to take a breath. But I would never, these days, in her heightened experience, isolate her in that and close the
no.
door and say, when you've calmed down, and not now, but when she's older, it would be like, you think about what you did and come out and tell me when you're ready. Just say sorry. Like, that's not helpful.
No, and if we went back into that, like you and I were talking, knowing about the brain, there's so much, neuroscience around the brain now that I think it's important that everybody should learn and know it because you know that developmentally the child's brain's nowhere near any of the conversation that you're currently having with them.
No.
And therefore, once you find that out, then I think that's the best knowledge a person can have. And I was actually
Mm.
talking to your mum, Kate, about how she should actually do tiny videos of where is your child at? This is where the brain is currently at. So if you say words like, I'll put you in your room and when you're sorry, you can come out and tell me that
Mm.
if they're not even there, what's the point?
Yeah.
And it actually, for a logical person, though, I think that makes sense for them. And I think if
Yes.
everybody knew about all of that, but they don't. And so therefore, it's up to people like you two to teach
Mm.
people like that, because I think it's so important. Go on, sorry.
I think it's also just a matter of within that as well, you find what works for you. Because I know
Mm,
so many times I would hear that, and then she would be hitting me and biting me, and I'm like, I can't, I, I don't feel safe right now. I can't keep
mm,
validating this
yeah,
feeling because
yeah,
I am so distressed myself because you're causing me physical pain.
Mm.
That I think it is also a matter of finding your own balance within that. So
mm,
in that example, what I would often do and sometimes still have to is pop her in her cot. I'd go in the room with her, put her in her
mm,
cot and say, I can see you having trouble being safe right now. So I'm going to pop you away so that you can't hurt me. But let's talk about what you feel like. I can see you're feeling angry and you still kind of work through those emotions and distance yourself from it because I can't keep being hit. But I think that's where it's taken me some time to work out how to do that for
mm,
myself and how that works best for my family and for my child because every child will be so different in how they respond to that. We might have another child that validate the feeling and they're all good.
mm,
Sometimes it's easy, that's not enough. And it is a matter of finding your own ways. We don't do full time out, but do we put her in the cot sometimes
yep,
and take a step back while we
yes,
talk to her?
yep,
Absolutely, because
yep.
there's no way I can take that much
No,
hitting some days.
no.
No,
And it's
and
a
that
safety
behavior,
boundary.
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Mm.
And that's a really great
Mm.
solution to that
Mm.
because
Mm.
I'm sure that happens to a lot of people. I think that's a wonderful solution because like you say,
Mm.
you're still in the room. I mean, I did used to put my children in their rooms and leave the door open and
Mm.
I'd just say, come out when you're ready. But,
Yeah.
and that kind of, they haven't got any childhood trauma, I don't think. And I always say, let's say to people like you say, Steph and I were saying the other day, if there's going to be any harm of any kind, they're better out. If you're
Mm.
that stressed in an emotional situation, they are
Yeah.
better not near you. But your way is a very safe way of putting them
Mm.
away from you because hitting and
Um,
punching isn't acceptable either, is it?
yeah,
Or
exactly.
biting. That's the
Mm.
And I
trouble.
think that's
Mm.
something that mum and I have talked to a lot about too, and maybe
Mm.
sometimes I've challenged mum on a little bit, is that it's from my opinion, it's
Mm.
impossible to avoid all childhood trauma of every description.
Yeah.
Like
That's
there
right.
is, if you get consumed with, I can't cause this child any form of trauma, you will do your own head in
Oh, you
because
will.
it's not possible
Yeah.
to be the perfect parent all the
Mm.
time. You just actually
Mm.
can't do it.
Mm.
And so I think I've found that quite freeing too, in just acknowledging, look, we'll all have shit that we carry in our childhoods. That's
You
part
will.
of being a human. Like,
Yeah.
there's
Yep.
stuff from my childhood that I work
Mm.
through now. Mum was
Mhm.
an amazing parent, but there's also things that I'll carry. And likewise, Cece will have stuff that she
Yeah.
carries where one day she'll turn around and go, remember how you used to do that? I actually didn't find that helpful. And now I've learnt this, this, this.
Yeah.
And that's fine. And that's part of being humans. Like, I think we can get so caught on trying to avoid trauma that it's this fine balance between, don't deliberately inflict it,
No.
but it's also you can't get it perfect all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I can I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
quickly add into that? I totally
Yeah.
agree, and we've had many conversations, and we're around that.
Oh.
And
And
the other piece, the other extension of that, I suppose, is the repair. So when you do get it wrong, because you will get it wrong, and that's totally fine. If you repair after that, if you go and say, yeah, well, when you were yelling at mummy and mummy yelled back at you to say, don't yell, guess that felt confusing. And I'm sorry, that wasn't right for me to be yelling either. And, so when we acknowledge where we could have done it better and build that repair, that's also really, it holds that, it doesn't disrupt that connection as well. And the other little bit to speak into that, loosely related, but I was thinking of it when you're talking about the brain and connected to this, is that the times when your child is heightened isn't the learning opportunity. It's not in that moment, because their brain is now in a fight and flight state. That is a completely different brain state than the brain state we require to hold and retain learning. So many parents want to sit their child down in their heightened state. And me too, by the way. I'm not, and whenever I say anything like this, no judgment. I have no judgment on any parent. Like, we're all on our own journey, and we're only sharing our journey, because I used to do this with my kids. I now know is unhelpful if you'd sit down when they're really heightened and say, you want to explain the lesson. Well, that's, when you kick me, that makes me really upset, and I can't help you with that. And how else could you do it? What might you do differently to express your feelings? Not a conversation right then, but a very helpful conversation. But you have it in the moment, you do whatever, you stay alongside and help them soothe and come back to their calmer place. And then sometime later, whether it's that day or even the next day, it doesn't matter. But when they're in a calm place, then you have the conversation. Hey, when you were kicking me, what's another way that we could handle this? What do you think we could do next time? What did you feel building up to that? Was there something you could do earlier? And so you bring in the learning, but not at the time they're heightened.
No. And let's face it, we know that full well ourselves, don't we? When we're really angry and someone starts being rational, we're like, get lost. I'm not listening to
Or
this.
if someone tells you to calm down, like,
That's
there's no
right.
need to calm down.
That's exactly right. First answer, smack back. Don't tell me that. And the other thing you say about trauma is what we think might have traumatized our children. Cass comes out with some stuff, and I think, oh, I didn't know that you were thinking that. The traumas that you imagine that you might be giving your child as a child might never even eventuate. I say about my mum, I think when I was a teenager, I said to her, oh, Mum, do my pants look too tight? And she just said, oh, don't worry, dear, big thighs run in the family. Now, as you can see, that's traumatized me for the rest of my life. But, for her, it was just a comment. So you don't know what comment, you don't know what is going to stick. So you really just do your best, and you hope like hell. And I said to my guys, I did my very best, and if you have to see a psychiatrist or a psychologist, I'll pay for it. It's all good. So, but it is the truth of it. We can only protect ourselves and our kids, and the ultimate thing is that you have to be really comfortable and be good in yourself, because you are the one parenting. You are the person. So if you're not good with who you are and what you're doing, then your child's not going to be good. So it's a lot of you've got to have a lot of confidence in yourself in that sense too. I totally agree. That's fantastic ideas and so good to hear. Now, what I want to talk about is when you have these kind of methods of doing it, but not everybody sees the same page as you. And Kate, you kind of mentioned how you educate the family to the ways that you choose to parent. So what are some of the common misconceptions or misunderstandings people might have about your approach?
I think, I know we keep saying this, but I think a big thing is around sitting through those feelings and being okay with what they're feeling in that moment, because I think the default is to want to correct it or move past it and label behaviors as good or bad, that no, that's a really naughty thing to do, don't do that, rather than really understanding maybe why they're doing that. I think the others can sometimes feel, I don't know. Sometimes it's semantics, and I think we often have discussions too where it's like, oh, does it really matter if we correct them on this, or do we just let it
Mm,
go?
mm,
But I think there's just even little things like, often there's things like, instead of saying be careful all the time, or like, if they're trying to do things, instead of helicoptering and saying be careful, don't touch that, don't do that, helping bring awareness to their body in terms of, okay, where are your feet right now? Do they feel strong? Can we use our hands? Can we, like, just different ways of
yeah.
approaching things?
Mm,
And again, at the end of the day, is that going to make all the world of difference? Possibly not, but it's just finding ways to slowly kind of implement that. I think the other big one that we that was met with some, I don't know, people maybe found it was a little optimistic when we started, but we didn't really do any screen time when she was little. Pretty much for the first 12 months, she didn't really use screens at all. And I know there were a few comments from family around like, oh, good luck doing that with the second one. And it's like, well, we're not on our second one.
Yeah,
We're just
no,
doing our first.
that's
And
right.
for now, for us, this is what works.
yeah.
And I think also just being really transparent with people that this will evolve over time. We're not
Mm,
saying no screen time
Mm,
forever. This is what works for us at the moment. And sure enough, by the time she was one, and particularly now, we use it when we need it. We're not
yep.
completely anti,
Yes.
don't ever do any screen time. For me, I would be punishing myself without it.
yeah.
There is nothing better than when I just need to get ready quickly in the morning, get her in the car to say, here's an episode of Bluey while I do my hair. Like, it just, sometimes you need it. And for me, it's unnecessarily hard without it. So I
Yep.
might as well just use it when
Yeah.
I need to. So
Yeah.
I think it's just, yeah, having ongoing discussions with people about that and explaining
Mm,
that this will change and evolve as we go.
mm, and you'll handle it. You'll handle it when you get there.
Yeah,
That's the
and we'll
thing.
let
You
you
can't
know.
handle it
Like,
until you can't handle it until you're there. You can't handle it until you
yeah,
have the second child. Like,
yeah,
let's not get into
yeah,
that. Seriously, we're just
exactly.
doing it now. And look,
I've got a
Kate,
6-month-old. I'm just caught in the
yes,
middle.
that's right, Kate. Honestly, my children always had the wiggles or something in the morning, so you could get in a shower and do something
Yeah,
like
exactly.
and look at you guys. You're all good. It is
Yeah,
that you do have more social media, and there is a lot more happening for you in that area. But
Mm.
but I agree. You've got to do what works for you, and if you have to get dressed, you have to get dressed.
yeah. Sometimes you
Yes,
just got to.
yeah, you just have to. Steph, you got any views on that?
I was going to say something and I've forgotten. I agree with all of that. Yeah, screen time. That was going to be the thing.
Yeah.
In terms of grandparenting.
Yes.
It's we've had, and we're so able to have these really
Mm.
open and honest discussions. So even within either my childhood trauma lens expectations on Kate, or Kate's, let's use an example, screen time expectations on me,
Mm.
it's how much so we both sort of agree there's some not negotiables.
Yeah.
And then there's okay, well, I didn't do this, but let's say I'd say I'm going to let her have an hour in front of the TV.
Mm-hmm.
In that first year, I didn't, but let's say I want that
Mm.
I didn't understand the importance of that. I think it's important to be flexible enough and respect which are the ones that I'm just going to go to the grandparent I'm talking in this case.
Mm.
I'm really sorry, Mum, but this is very important to me, and I'm going to ask you if you could please respect that, versus, I'd really rather that you didn't have her in front of the screen, but, if
Yeah.
that's what you need to
Yeah.
do. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Just agreeing
Yes.
those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I think you
Yeah.
do, to an extent, need to pick your battles. Like,
Mm.
it is, you work out which ones are the most important, and they might be the ones that you pass on, or that you really ask, look, hey, we'd really prefer you do this or this.
Yeah.
And then some of it, it's like, look, would we give her a nice block at 10 o'clock in the morning? Probably not.
But grandparents can.
But if grandma
Yeah.
wants to, whatever, she can do
And
it
I-
with the sugar
yes.
high.
That's right. And I was going to say too, is that your parents are usually doing you a favor. Like grandparents are doing
Oh,
a favor. So it
and I
is
think
really
that's a
hard,
fine balance.
isn't it?
Mm.
It is a
Yeah,
hard balance
'cause-
because I know that you want to parent your child your way, and the grandparents will sometimes have very different ideas around it. But in the end of it, you really have to you do have to negotiate that.
Yeah, it's never
Mm.
going to be exactly the way that you
Mm.
do things at home.
Mm.
Sleep's a big one that we also kind of started to let go of too, in that, I'll update mum, so mum has her 1 day a week, my mother-in-law has her 1 day a week. So I'll say, look, at the moment she's normally having 2 naps, about half an hour, but see how you go. And some days I'd
Yep.
come back and she'd had a 1 2 hour nap, and it throws her out for the rest of the night. But it's like,
Yep.
okay, so be it. Like,
Yeah.
you looked after her all
Mm.
day. I'm so
Mm.
grateful for that support, and we'll
Mm.
make it work. If it's something that is really important, or let's say that happened 5 weeks in a row, I might turn around and go, hey, do you reckon you could cap that a little bit? Because we're starting to struggle. But
Yeah.
I think there is an element of flexibility in there too, because, and that's probably also how we tend to parent. We're not super regimented with everything either, that she's pretty good at going with the flow. She'll sleep different places. She'll run on different routines. And I think for me, that's been something important for her to learn too, that not everything's going to happen exactly the same wherever you are.
And that's a great point, because I think to a degree, as a mum, we like them to be fed what we want them to be fed, and do what we want to do. But actually, what you're creating is variety and a change, so that they can adapt much more easily than in your rigid, in the rigid plan of things too. No, I think that's
I
really
really
cool.
respect both Kate and Ben have been just, I think it's a really terrific strength in the level of flexibility they afford everybody else. Like I wasn't like, when someone was holding my baby, let's say,
Mm.
I knew exactly how they like to be held, or not that much upright. And this is, and then they'd be, and so if I'd pass my baby to someone else, I might not say it, but in my head I'd be like, oh, you need to, whereas Kate would just be like, here she is.
Yep.
And walk away. And even if she was crying, especially if my baby was crying,
Yeah.
I needed to have him back, because only I could,
That's
soothe
right.
them.
Settle them. Yep.
Yeah, but Kate and Ben have just been terrific at, oh, you do you. She'll, you work it out. And of course, therefore, we have, slightly different with Shauna, mother-in-law, and myself, having her regularly. It probably was important for us to find our own way, but you've sort of been like that with, anyone. They're just, quite
Yeah.
relaxed,
Yes.
easygoing parents. And of course, that helps to build resilience in Cece as well.
It does. And also for me, grandparents, when does a grandparent feel taken for granted and in their role, and I think having open communication is super important, because I think a lot of the time grandparents are taken for granted, not in your scenario as such, but I'm just saying in terms of life. A lot of the time, I've just heard some rippers recently, one of someone who's a school teacher, and she goes on holiday and she has to look after the grandchildren all holidays, stuff like that. And another one I heard recently was they were the grandparents doing chemo, and they made a date for a Friday, and their adult child said to them, "That's really inconvenient. Could you change it?" So, you've got areas and times. So how do you keep yourselves from getting in that level of just expectation and keeping it fresh and understanding and being thankful? How do you master that between you?
I don't know if we've just fallen into it. I think I've always kind of seen it quite differently. So Cece does one day at childcare too. So we've kind of got a bit of a mix of things.
Yep.
And one of the things that I like about childcare too is that can be quite transactional. They're doing a service, you take the kid there, you drop them off, don't need to think about it, you pick them up when you're done. And that is not how I view bringing her to the grandparents. Like, that's a different thing for me.
Yep.
And so I do have a different expectation that, if I drop her off to mum or if I drop her off to Shauna, I'm sitting down, we're having a chat, we're doing all of that to start with. It's not a drop and run kind of thing. And likewise, when you pick her up too, it's a proper check-in, and I'm there to see them too. It's not just a service they're giving. It is,
Yes.
it's
It's a relationship.
family time. It's a relationship. That's a much better way to put it. And I think that's always just felt really different in my head, the two ways to do those things.
It's a good point.
Yep.
Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, I think part of that too is also then just come into the communication element, so that if there are times where, say, I have a 10 o'clock client and I'm dropping her at mum's at 9:30, I'll give mum a heads up that it's like, okay, today I actually can't stay and chat. I've got to get to this. So
Yes.
I'll check in with you afterwards, or whatever it is. But just being really aware and treating that differently to what you do traditional childcare, because they're very different things.
Yes.
That's what I was going to say, is the communication. Kate's excellent. It's so thoughtful around the communication piece for us. And even only, I don't know, in the last month or so, don't know, maybe you sent me a message just checking in, something along the lines of, I never want you to feel like I take you for granted. And if it ever feels too much what I ask for, it's so important that I know that you're going to let me know. I'm just saying your words, but Kate holds the door open all the time. It doesn't take it for granted, and fairly regularly checks in. Is this still working? Or if we need extra, like, because there'll be times they'll be out on Saturday night and she might stay the night, or, you've been away on a holiday and she stayed some days during the week. But it will never be an expectation, just, it's always very gentle consideration and check-in and very respectful. And I think that even predates you even having, or me even having CC was, when Kate was pregnant, I remember her saying, just sussing out, not as an expectation, but just for planning, are you going to have her at 1 day a week? And I'd be like, oh, heck no, I'm too busy. My life's too busy. I see clients every day. No, won't be doing that for a while. And that's actually how I felt. And so that was fine. Kate. And then, because
For the record, I remember thinking, there's no way that's going to happen, but sure. Let's just readdress this when the baby's
I've had that
here.
same conversation
anyway.
with Cassie.
yeah, and then once the baby was here, and because in those early days, as Kate described, it was difficult with some of the postnatal depression. So I ended up having CC much earlier than I thought. And in that, even then, I was thinking, my perspective was I'm helping my daughter because she's in a struggle, not because I'm babysitting my granddaughter. It's a subtle difference in the head. But of course, the moment of have had her, even the first day, I'm like, oh, this is going to keep happening. This is fantastic. So, yeah.
But I think what you're saying, though, between the pair of you is that there is great communication sitting there, and it's not a set-in thing that you have expectations around forever, and that change happens all the time, and that you're willing to compromise and make change. And I think that's the most important thing for people to know and understand, is that it's not just you're babysitting now, this is your day, this is forever, and I'm not going to be in and ask you how things are going, and not have that expectation that, well, you really want to do it. That's a great learning, really good, and a really good way of setting it up, I think.
Yeah.
So thank you so much again for your time and your fantastic relationship that you have, and the different ideas that you have around child rearing and getting along with each other and grandparenting. And I know that things change all the time. And I think that's the most important thing, is that you do too. And I think that's the most important thing to acknowledge about life. Nothing is perfect. It's always going to change. But if you live your best life for now and do the best that you can, that's all we can do. So thank
I
you
agree.
both. Thank you both so much for your time.
It's been
Really
fun. Thanks for
appreciate it.
having
It
us.
has. And I will see you again at some stage.
Absolutely.
See you.
Bye. Yeah.
As we wrap up today's conversation on parenting and the role of grandparents, I'd like to leave you with a few things to think about. First of all, let's remember, parenting is a dynamic journey. What works for your child one day might evolve the next. Flexibility, open communication, and a willingness to adjust are key in both parenting and grandparenting. And it's also important to give yourself a break, knowing that you can't be perfect all the time. As Steph and Kate mentioned, understanding the developmental ages of your child's brain and being present during difficult moments rather than reacting immediately can create more lasting positive outcomes. If you're a grandparent, stay connected to your children and recognise that your role isn't just there to help with daycare, but it's actually to actively communicate and respect their parenting choices. Find that balance where you can offer support, but also respect boundaries. And remember, it's okay to change and adapt over a period of time. Lastly, be kind to yourself. Parenting is challenging, but it's also rewarding. And there's not one size fits all ever in your approach. And whether you're navigating screen time, outdoor play, or those tough emotional moments, know that you're doing your best, and learning along the way is all you can really do. So take a deep breath, stay present, and embrace the journey. Thank you for listening to Parenting and Personalities. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you could leave a rating and a review that would help others learn about this podcast. If you're interested in discovering more about you and your family's personality types, you'll find my book, Who Is This Monster or Treasure in My House, on Booktopia or Amazon. And if you have an episode idea, please send a note to thepersonalitycoach@gmail.com. Many thanks to our producers at Stories and Strategies, and we'll see you next time.